climbing mountains. What's climbing mountains got to do with life, spirituality, evolution, etc.? So take climbing a physical mountain as an example. So it's a physical effort. It will require mental effort, mental discipline, etc. Through that, you'll start off, when you're at the bottom, you'll start off with your supplies. You'll have certain type of clothing depending on what the climate is like. Let's assume it's fairly warm. um, so as you start to climb up that mountain, you've got all your supplies, you've got your food, you've got your water, etc. And as you start to climb that mountain, what's going to happen is you're going to burn calories, you're going to use energy, so you're going to consume your food to fuel you to continue climbing up that mountain. But the load that you're carrying in your backpack is going to reduce. You're going to transform that into usable movement energy. So now it's become a form of like solid energy, and it will become transferred into kinetic energy, and it will be lost through, like sweat and heat and waste, etc. But let's keep this really simple. When you're climbing up that mountain, you're letting go of baggage, if you like, when you climb up. If you didn't need those supplies, you wouldn't carry them in the first place. So you'll start heavier, and as you get up, you'll get lighter. Now, to take the second step, you've got to leave the first. To take the third step, you've got to leave the second. So we get higher and higher up this mountain. Now it's okay to take a break and to have a rest. And at the top of the mountain is what we're looking to achieve. Now, a physical mountain for me is still what you might call horizontal progression. It's still on the plane of the physical. You can climb as many mountains as you want, get them as high as you want, yet you're still traversing physical space with your physical body. When it comes to spiritual growth, you're climbing a mountain, you're making vertical progression. That means what's happening is you're cutting through the things that hold you back. So rather than going around a circle on the mountain, you're going up in a spiral. So you're reaching new heights. You're breaking through physical, mental, and emotional barriers that have kept you at a certain level. So for example, climbing that mountain, if you're afraid to reach a new height, you might not push yourself. You might be afraid, oh, am I going to have enough when I get there? But how do you know what it's like if you've never climbed this mountain before? So the mountain is a metaphor for spiritual growth and following the spiritual path, which we're all on unknowingly. Some of us stay at certain levels for longer than others. Now, when you get higher up the mountain, it can get more difficult because you have to leave behind your comforts. It doesn't mean always physically leaving behind your comforts, but it means psychologically not being attached to the outcome. So if I'm attached to somebody, I might try to keep them there. I might want them to perform a certain way or do certain things. And if they don't, there's an or else. So most businesses and most relationships operate under the pretense of, if you don't do this, then this will happen, and that's just the way they operate. And it's an agreed upon societal standard, and that's okay. There's nothing. I'm not saying it's wrong, but as you start to climb up the spiritual path, you start to see things differently. So as you get higher up, the vantage point is different. So from a spiritual point of view, things down here look very different. And so in Hinduism, you've got your third eye, you've got your third chakra. So you have what we call your outer vision through your physical eyes, and you've got your inner vision, which is through your inner eye. And through that inner vision, you see things that some people can't see just because they haven't climbed that spiritual mountain yet, or they haven't moved up it. And so when you have a conversation with someone that, and you're trying to relate to them from a spiritual point of view, sometimes they don't always understand because they haven't seen what it's like to be up there. So it's like someone giving you advice about traveling to France and they've never been to France. So it's better to actually go there yourself and experience it firsthand, or speak to somebody who's also climbed that path. So the spiritual journey isn't just about listening to someone, it's about doing something with it. So this stuff I'm sharing with you here, it's not about just, like, I'm practicing what I talk about, and these are the little breadcrumbs that I leave behind for other people to potentially use. So it's like, imagine I've climbed a mountain. I don't know if you've been climbing, you'll understand, like, sometimes when you go climbing, there's these like bolts in the wall. So when you're climbing up with your rope, you can clip in, but it's the bolts that people have put there. So whoever first climbed it put those bolts in, and then other people that come along to climb that same route can just clip in as they go along. So it's similar to that. There's books, there's teachers, there's so much stuff out there, which are like little pointers. So use what you need as a map, as a pointer to assist you on your journey of climbing that spiritual mountain. Now, why even climb this mountain? What's on the top of that mountain? Well, it's liberation. It's transcendence of suffering. It's transcendence of all the sufferings that are associated with the body. So when we're bodily identified, when we haven't opened up our spiritual centers and we're not on the spiritual path, we're subject to the laws of duality. So you can there's pleasure and pain, and you move between the two, and that's why we suffer. But going through the spiritual path, as the Buddhists call it, the middle way, following the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, is to transcend that suffering. So life is suffering, i.e., the life we're living here physically. But to transcend that suffering, there is a path that you can follow, and there's many different paths out there. So choose the one that resonates with you, and the whole point of it is you're actually making, so you're going somewhere. So an example of horizontal progression would be, let's say you're poor and you've got I don't know, you don't have much money in your bank balance, you've got nothing in your bank balance, and then all of a sudden you do something and you end up with 50 grand in your account. Might seem as a better position, right? Okay, great, fine. It's more comfortable. Okay, great. Then you might get 100 grand, and then you might get 1 million, etc., etc., etc. Now there'll come a point when you'll have more than enough. It might be in excess, and you might continue to go on that path horizontally, because money is important. All these things are important because you need them to go on the spiritual journey. It provides a solid platform. But after a certain point, it can become a bit too much, and you'll know, because you won't feel fulfilled. Like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need a certain amount of each thing to climb up this mountain. There will come a point when eventually you can let those things go, because you've gone so high up the mountain, those things no longer apply up here. And that's why some yoga teachers and some yogis and some mystics out there, some of them don't eat, drink water, some of them don't even sleep. And that's because they've got their vibration so high that they're able to generate energy by a direct connection with the quantum field, or God, whatever you want to call this infinite field of potential. So the mountain leads ultimately to the gates of heaven. It transcends the world of limitation, of separation, of suffering, of bouncing between, like a pinball, between pleasure and pain, and you move into the state of heaven, or as the Hindus call it, Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. And that's a path that has been forged by many saints in the past. Jesus is one example, Buddha is another, Ramana Maharshi is another, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Neem Karoli Baba. There's so many out there. Have a look, do your research. But it's not just about reading and doing your research. It's about how do you apply this to your life, and keep doing your thing. But what I found really helps is connecting to the spirit within. Now, this might be a bit controversial. Some people might not like this, but we each have a direct connection with God. God knows everything that we're up to. God is I like to see it as like an all-seeing eye, if you like, of the universe, a loving father-mother figure who knows everything, who wants us home, just like a loving father-mother would want the best for their children. They wouldn't expect anything. They might challenge them, give them problems to solve, because they know they'll grow from it, but they would never punish them. Not in a like vindictive, vengeful way, but more in a loving way. We'll be like, look, I'm going to be a bit more firm with you here, because I know it's for your greater good. It's not going to hurt you. You might think it is, but that's because the ego is getting in the way. Actually, I really love you, and there's no sacrifice asked of God. It's only the ego, the false self, these false ideas we've got in our head about what God is, that creates this this suffering. So climbing up the mountain, you go above the clouds, you can see the light. So illumination. Another analogy: imagine a dark warehouse. I like to use an Amazon warehouse because those are bloody huge. Imagine you're inside and you're trapped and you want to get out, but it's pitch black, like literally pitch black. You can move around it. Yeah, you might hit yourself a few times. You might figure things out. You might be going around in circles or whatever. That's going through life without the lights on. Now, if you illuminate the place by turning the lights on, you can more easily navigate. So the process of spiritual growth is to illuminate the mind so you can see things more clearly, so you can navigate life without going through as much bumps and knocks, without suffering as much. So you'll still have the same warehouse, you'll still have the same life, you'll still do the same things, but because the lights are now on, you can see things more clearly. So opening your spiritual eye is to see things more clearly so that you can navigate with less suffering, and so you can operate life with more love. You're not going to damage yourself when you go to work, because you'll know when enough is enough. You'll know when you've got enough money in the bank balance and when it's time to take a break. You'll know when it's time to go to the gym or go for a workout or some form of exercise than sitting at home and watching Netflix and binging on ice cream or whatever. Those things aren't wrong, by the way. So climb the mountain. Vertical progression means you transcend. So you wouldn't be experiencing the same thing. You'll feel a difference in terms of what you're thinking. You'll start to feel better, never to go back to suffering. You might come back a few times, but eventually you'll transcend it. You'll see a change in your physique, in your body, in your relationships, in pretty much everything. Most important one is psychologically and emotionally, because a psychological problem cannot be solved at the level of uh, physical activity or action. It can help sometimes. So if you're, I don't know, let's say you're depressed about yourself, going to the gym can help, because whilst you're at the gym, you might subconsciously be working on your mind at the same time. You might be rallying yourself up inside. So it's not just the exercise, it's what the exercise encourages you to do on a mental level. So true transcendence is a form of psychotherapy as opposed to just physical therapy. Sometimes you can do the physical thing but not change mentally, and that's when it doesn't actually work, even though the physical act is a beautiful act or a healthy act to do. So, and you can sometimes just work in meditation, do psychotherapy, and not actually do the physical thing and actually see a difference. So it's the mental shift that actually has an impact. Anyway, that's enough for now. Peace out. Have a great day. Much love, everyone.